play smart. Box smart. Winners play smart.
Historically, when normalized per event or compared to the relative number of scrums that happen in a match, scrum injury rates are higher than most other phases of play. Injuries in the scrum are mostly calf muscle and lumbar spine injuries. However, calf injuries and shoulder injuries are generally more severe and keep players out of the game for longer. In community level rugby, it was found that about 6% of scrums end up in scrum collapse, as opposed to at international level, where it is much higher. It has also been shown that with normal scrum-related injuries, collapsed scrums are 2 to 4 times more likely to end up in an injury than where there is no scrum collapse. Scrum collapse injuries are also 6 times greater in severity than non-collapsed scrum injuries.
Aside from the normal injuries, the biggest concern around scrums has always been related to its association with catastrophic spinal cord injuries and more recently with its potential for long-term degenerative spinal problems. In a study focusing on top-level players, the scrum contributed towards 71% of the recorded front-row lumbar spine injuries, 56% of the thoracic spine injuries, and 41% of the cervical spine injuries. However, the ones with the most devastating consequences are the serious neck or cervical spine injuries, and these are far more prevalent in the amateur game. These injuries have a significant impact on the injured player, their families, and on society in general. Albeit that serious spinal cord injury numbers in the scrum are few, when they do happen, they're generally more severe and have a higher associated risk of permanent injury. The most common area of injury in the neck lies on the lower levels between C4 and C6, or between your 4th and 6th cervical spine vertebra, and are mostly due to facet joint dislocations. In the early days of BoxSmart, scrum injuries contributed to about 42% of all catastrophic head, neck, and spine injuries, which at the time was comparable to other scientific literature in this regard. Approximately 95% of these injuries were at amateur level, and 85% of them happened in matches. During the initial years of gathering standardized injury data, there was a systematic rise in scrum injuries, reaching as high as 7 catastrophic scrum injuries in 2011 alone. Now, these were mostly the result of impact on engagement and scrum collapse. These numbers were simply far too high. After completion of the first nationwide cycle of BoxSmart rugby safety courses in 2011, the number of scrum injuries came down sharply in 2012. With the additional introduction of the SA Rugby Amateur Scrum laws, combined with the school age banding regulation restrictions for front rowers, which were both applied at the start of 2013, further improvements were made on the catastrophic head, neck, and spine scrum injury front, and these improvements have since been maintained.
World Rugby, by their own research team and coming from a completely different angle, came to the same conclusions and brought in similar scrum law changes at the top end of the game in May 2013. Research led by Bath University in the UK on the currently used pre-bind technique has shown on average reductions of about 20% in peak engagement forces, speed of engagement and acceleration, while maintaining scrum stability and the sustained pushing forces associated with the scrum contest. At the same time, by bringing the two packs closer together, this reduces the possibility of head impact on engagement, as the two packs are already aligned in their channels at setup. The ability to take a proper legal bind prior to the engagement also allows for less slipped or missed binds. This equates to better stability, less biomechanical loading, less chance of catastrophic injury, and over a longer playing career, less potential degeneration of the spine. And of course, better scrumming contests and more tight heads. Since 2011 in South Africa, there has not been a single catastrophic impact on engagement injury, which previously was by far the biggest cause of Scrum-related injuries, almost 60% of them. And to date, the last catastrophic Scrum collapse injury in South Africa was recorded in May of 2013. I quite like this statistic, so let's continue working together to keep it that way.